I am Anna Seewald, and this is Authentic Parenting, a podcast about personal development in the context of parenting, where I explore how you can find more calm, connection, and joy in parenting through the process of self-discovery and inner growth with a trauma-informed lens. I'm a parent educator, and my mission is to help children by helping parents. The motto of this podcast is raising our children, growing ourselves. Today, how to solve problems with kids collaboratively. How do you feel when you are faced with challenging behaviors such as screaming, kicking, crying, hitting, swearing, biting? Do you feel frustrated, angry, helpless, overwhelmed? How about when your children don't listen to you and show outright defiance? Do you want to know how you can get them to do things without rewards and punishments? Solve problems collaboratively rather than unilaterally, and proactively rather than reactively? I am joined today by Dr. Rose Greene. He's a clinical psychologist and the originator of the innovative evidence-based approach called Collaborative and Proactive Solutions, CPS. If you're familiar with Dr. Greene's books and work, then you are in for a real treat. If you're new to his work, you are about to discover something that will change your parenting. In this episode, Dr. Greene explains why kids exhibit challenging behaviors, why traditional behavior management strategies may not be effective for many kids, and how to use Plan B to solve problems collaboratively and teach your child the skills he or she is lacking. Dr. Greene's collaborative problem-solving model promotes working with challenging children to solve the problems that precipitate explosive episodes and teaching these kids the skills they lack. He discusses the fact that challenging behaviors occur under highly predictable conditions called unresolved problems, and describes how to go about identifying these unresolved problems in your child. Dr. Greene believes that kids do well if they can. He is the author of several influential books: The Explosive Child, Lost at School, Lost and Found, and his latest book, Raising Human Beings. By the way, Raising Human Beings is the book of the month of December in the Authentic Parenting Book Club. He also developed and executive produced the award-winning documentary film, The Kids We Lose, released in 2018, which I admit I haven't seen. Dr. Greene was on the faculty at Harvard Medical School for over 20 years and founded the nonprofit Lives in the Balance in 2009. He is also adjunct professor in the Department of Psychology at Virginia Tech and in the Faculty of Science at the University of Technology in Sydney, Australia. Dr. Greene has worked with several thousand behaviorally challenging kids and their caregivers, and he and his colleagues have overseen implementation and evaluation of the CPS model in hundreds of schools, inpatient psychiatry units, residential and juvenile detention facilities with dramatic effect, significant reductions in recidivism, discipline referrals, detentions, suspensions, and use of restraint and seclusion. Dr. Greene lectures throughout the world, and he lives in Portland, Maine. Please enjoy. Dr. Greene, welcome to the show.
Thank you for inviting me to do this.
I am very excited, as is our community. I mentioned in my email they are reading your book for a book club, your latest book, Raising Human Beings, and people are loving it. I finished myself participating in the book club. is I have a very challenging, almost 13-year-old. And I have been applying your method more recently, frequently than before. And I would say maybe throughout my entire parenting. I think I reached out to this book more often now, more frequently I refer to it. The book, The Explosive Child, I have both of the copies, all of your books, but the two of them are on my desk. The Explosive Child is 22 years old. Is that correct?
The Explosive Child is, hold on, first came out in 1998. It's 22 years old.
Wow, that's incredible. That is incredible how many lives have been impacted by this approach. However, not much has changed in our culture, right? Since you wrote this book, we're still using traditional ways of parenting. Education system definitely uses the traditional punishment reward system. It's taking a long time for change to happen.
Well, I think we knew it was going to take a long time. Mm-hmm. I do think it is changing. I think that educators are face to face with the fact that disciplining kids the traditional way hasn't worked for a lot of kids and has made a lot of their students extremely expensive. Because if you're doing something that isn't working, then this kid is eventually going to need a special classroom, a special school, a special facility. And that's when these kids start becoming very expensive. So even if we aren't paying attention to the human tragedy of losing a kid, we should definitely be paying attention to the financial cost of doing things in a way that aren't working for that kid. So I think that things are actually moving in the right direction. Things are even, we'll see how far it goes, moving in the right direction legislatively. A bill, Keeping All Kids Safe Act, was recently reintroduced in the United States to try to eliminate the use of restraint and seclusion. We'll see if that makes it any further than it has in its previous iterations, but I think that things are slowly but surely moving in the right direction, and that's good.
Yes, slowly is the key word there. What I love about your approach is the use of language that you have, the lagging skills, the unresolved problems, difficulties, and we'll get into all of that. But what I don't like is the explosive child term. And I'm wondering if you have things to say about that title.
Yeah, I don't like it either. And the truth is, it was my first book, and it's not what I wanted the book to be called originally, but the publisher had its way. Ever since then, the names of books have been totally of my choosing. But The Explosive Child wasn't. And my biggest regret about Explosive Child is that it leaves out a whole bunch of kids who are imploding instead of exploding, or doing some combination of the two. And the reality is that whether a kid is exploding or imploding or some combination of the two, their behavior is simply communicating to us that they're having difficulty meeting certain expectations. So I don't really love the idea of slicing the pie by exploding, imploding, or some combination of the two. Bottom line is, behavior is communication. Behavior communicates that kids are having difficulty meeting certain expectations. So my biggest regret is that people who have kids who are imploding may not have benefited from The Explosive Child because they would have never thought to have read it, because it sounds like it's limited just to kids who are exploding when they're having difficulty meeting expectations. That's a shame.
Yes, that makes total sense now. With this pandemic, especially, speak of expectations placed on our children, as I can see it in my own household. My daughter is struggling. So are other children. And, what worked before in terms of parenting doesn't work anymore because there is enormous stress, pressure, and tremendous expectations on our children. Some we placed on them, some the society, some the school, some the kid themselves, they put pressure and expectations. But let's talk about why behaviorally challenging kids are challenging. What's going on. Not all kids have, as I say about my daughter, she's a difficult person. That's my way of saying she has sometimes, behavioral challenges. What are the reasons? Are they not listening to us because they are defying, they're testing limits? Are they seeking attention? Are they bad inherently, or are we failing as parents?
None of the above. What the research tells us is that they are lacking important skills. Globally, those skills include flexibility and adaptability and frustration tolerance and problem solving. Kids are accustomed to having adults place expectations on them. That's sort of what happens when you're a kid. It doesn't mean that as a kid you can't put expectations on yourself, but a lot of the expectations that are being placed on kids are coming from their caregivers, as you said, parents, educators, soccer coaches, whoever. When kids have no difficulty meeting those expectations, life is good. The expectations and the kid's ability to meet them are well matched with each other. It's when kids have difficulty meeting our expectations that there's incompatibility. And I talked a lot about this in Raising Human Beings. And then how the kid expresses that there's incompatibility, how they express that they're having difficulty meeting certain expectations is, as I referred to before, either lucky, whining, pouting, withdrawing, crying, or unlucky, screaming, swearing, hitting, spitting, kicking, destroying, running. But once again, whether they are communicating that they're having difficulty meeting expectations in ways that are lucky or unlucky, they're communicating the exact same thing. I'm stuck. There are expectations I'm having difficulty meeting. But to your question, why do some kids express that they're having difficulty meeting in ways that are unlucky? Because they are lacking the skills to express that they're having difficulty meeting expectations in ways that are lucky. And that's what the research has been telling us for a very long time. This is about lagging skills, not lagging motivation. A lot of the characterizations that you posed at the end of your question, limit testing, attention seeking, manipulative, coercive, unmotivated, those come from a line of thinking that suggests that kids are communicating that they're having difficulty meeting expectations in ways that are unlucky because they are unmotivated. But that's not what the research tells us. Unfortunately, if you believe that they're unmotivated, then you are going to try to motivate them to behave in ways that are less unlucky. But if you do that, you won't be busy solving any of the problems that the expectations the kid was having difficulty meeting in the first place. So lenses are really important here. And what the research has been telling us for a very long time is that this is about lagging skills, not lagging motivation.
And what do we traditionally do? We usually want to stop the undesirable, difficult, challenging behavior. We yell, we scream, we punish, increase the punishments, change the punishments. We want to get rid of that behavior as if we can. And we put all this time and energy into solving this problem like that, as opposed to teaching skills that they need, which a lot of people think, oh, that's going to take a lot of time. But it takes more time doing the traditional way, I believe, because the kid is not only not going to learn the skills, but we are always going to be sort of in charge, and it creates dependency, and the child is never learning what's important, and those behaviors are going to repeat and repeat and repeat. And it's a vicious cycle, as opposed to if we put in a lot of time and effort now, the benefits are long-term.
Well, and the way I put it is that if you are using reward and punishment programs, then you are focused on behavior, which some people refer to as the signal, as the symptom. I refer to it as the signal or the fever, or the way the kid is communicating that they're having difficulty meeting certain expectations. I think the big shift for a lot of people is to shift from focusing primarily on behavior, which is just the signal, to the problems that are causing those behaviors, which require resolution and problem solving. And reward and punishment programs don't solve problems. They just modify the behaviors that kids are exhibiting to communicate to us that they have those problems in the first place. So a very big shift for people is to move their primary focus not from the behavior, which is just the signal, to the problems that are causing that behavior. The next big shift is to solve those problems collaboratively rather than unilaterally. The kid is your partner. The kid is not your enemy. The kid is not your adversary. When you're solving problems collaboratively, you're not using power to accomplish anything. And then the third big shift is to solve those problems proactively rather than reactively. By the time the kid's challenging behavior, the kid's concerning behaviors occur, you're already late. The unsolved problem that set that concerning behavior in motion is already gone. It's already happened, right? So when we're focused on behavior, we're actually focused on what's late. Crisis management. We don't want to be in crisis management mode. We want to be in crisis prevention mode. We don't want to wait till a kid blows up and think of something ingenious to do to calm him down and let him know you don't want him to blow up the next time. First of all, the kid already knows you don't want him to blow up. Secondly, if all we're doing is rewarding and punishing the kid, rewarding the kid when they don't blow up and punishing the kid when they do blow up, we aren't doing anything related to solving the problem that is causing the kid to blow up in the first place. I find that those are the three really big shifts that are required for us to move things in the right direction.
Yes, I agree. I completely agree. I really want to go in depth into the three models of problem solving, not all of them, but particularly the second one, B. But before we do that, I just love the way you use language, the way you reframe everything, because the child is not the problem, right? And it's just so respectful, this whole approach. And that it touches my heart when I read this book like that, because I also worked for a long time in a correctional facility for juvenile delinquents with teenage boys. And, talk about the punitive model. I witnessed so much in that facility.
And of course, by the time a kid lands in a juvenile detention facility, they've already had more punitive than most of us will experience in a lifetime. If punitive was going to get the job done, it would have gotten the job done way before the kid landed in juvenile detention. And yet, in most juvenile detention facilities, what do they get more of? Punitive. Yes. Not what they need.
It's unfortunately, that's the model our society operates on, right? The punitive model of everything.
Some of our society does, but if we're paying attention to the research, then that's what should be the major force driving a change in how we're going about, number one, understanding these kids, and number two, going about trying to help them. Because punitive solves no problems, whether this is detention, suspension, expulsion, paddling, restraint, seclusion, stickers, counting to 3. None of that solves the problems that are causing the behaviors that we're doing that stuff in response to in the first place. None of those teach the kids the skills that they are lacking that are causing them to respond to problems and frustrations in ways that are unlucky. And so it's really the counterproductiveness of the whole system is really pretty mind-blowing, that these kids are getting exactly what they don't need from the word go and at almost every step along the way. And that's why there's something that is known as the school to prison pipeline or the cradle to prison pipeline. What the kid is bringing to the equation is lagging skills. What the caregivers are bringing to the equation is the expectations that they have for the kid and whether they are actually in line with what the kid can actually do, and how we respond when a kid is having difficulty meeting certain expectations. And boy, if we were focused on those parts of the equation, lagging skills, unsolved problems, and what you and I are about to talk about, how we're trying to solve those problems, if those problems were being solved collaboratively and proactively, both we and a whole bunch of kids out there would be a whole lot better off.
Absolutely. Especially with the numbers given, there is some alarming statistics I use in my, I talk to early childhood educators in conferences, and that there is alarming numbers of 50,000 children, preschool age kids, are being suspended each year in the United States. Preschool, this is how they start their education career. And here we are suspending, expelling kindergartners and young children because of behavioral challenges, because of behavioral issues. And it's really sad to see that.
Now, by the way, I should add, those
yes.
suspensions, and many people know this, but many don't, are being disproportionately applied to
African American children,
Black and brown students.
Yes.
And what's interesting is, if it's true that concerning behaviors occur when kids are having difficulty meeting certain expectations, then what those preschool suspensions tell us is not only that we are starting the whole punitive thing very early, but that and there's research telling us this too, that there's a lot of kids who enter preschool lacking the skills to meet the expectations that are being placed upon them. Number one, that tells us about our expectations and whether they are in line with what kids can actually do. And number two, it tells us that because these are the kids who, by the way, keep getting suspended, it tells us that all of those suspensions that accumulate over time are very counterproductive and aren't solving any of the problems that are causing the behaviors that those suspensions are being applied to in the first place. I mean, when you take a step back and you think, suspending a preschooler, does this make sense? The very vast majority of people would come to the same conclusion. No, it doesn't. And it's not going to fix anything that's going on with that preschooler that's causing the kid to exhibit concerning behaviors in the first place.
Yes. So the skills that you talk about, right? The adaptability, flexibility, problem solving, frustration tolerance. Let's say a child is 10 years old, 11, 13, and is exhibiting concerns or problems in this area, has difficulty with frustration management, being flexible and adaptable, with transitions and things of that nature. As a parent, did I miss anything in the earlier part of the development of my child? Is this my child's temperament partly? What's going on? Did I miss something in teaching, those skills? Or is my child somehow hardwired like this?
My usual response to questions like that is everything's 100% nature and 100% nurture.
Mm-hmm.
I don't actually spend a lot of time trying to figure out how a kid came to be a certain way. I don't think that question can actually be answered with any level of precision anyway. So I'd rather be practical. If I can't answer that question with great precision, let's just go with what we have now.
Excellent.
What we have now,
yes.
what we have now is a kid who's lacking skills. Let's figure out what those lagging skills are so that the adults in this kid's life have the right lenses on. And there's a lot of expectations this kid is having difficulty meeting. Let's figure out what those expectations are. Once again, they're called unsolved problems, so that we can begin solving them. If I can't answer a question with great precision, it's probably something that I'm not all that interested in spending time answering, even though it's a very common question that caregivers ask: how did this kid get to be this way? My pat response to that question is, I have no idea. And anybody who's pretending that they can answer that question with great precision is probably faking it. Plus, whatever those factors are, those are often things we can't really do anything about now. So let's just stay practical. What we can do something about now are our lenses. This kid is lacking a lot of skills. Let's figure out what they are. And what we're working on: problems, not behaviors. Solving problems collaboratively, not unilaterally. Solving problems proactively, not reactively.
Yes, I had to ask that question because it was asked in our community. I guess.
Oh, I love that question. It's a great question. I just think that it can't be answered I get asked that question all the time. So it's a question that I am used to. But I don't like it when mental health professionals pretend that they can answer that question with great precision. Things are complicated. It's usually not just one answer.
True. What I was hoping with that question is to give some peace of mind to the parent for blaming themselves for having done something wrong or failed or missed something. That was my angle.
Well, and I think that parents feeling blamed is partly the fault of the mental health profession, which in some quarters has been saying for a very long time that concerning behaviors in kids are due to passive, permissive, inconsistent, non-contingent, neglectful, inept parenting practices. So it is no wonder that a lot of parents out there, aside from the usual parental guilt, which just comes with the territory, have been feeling like they must have done something wrong. But what I'm always encouraging parents to think about is, how about your other kids? How did your parenting work for them? If you have well-behaved kids in your home and you applied pretty much the same approach to your kid with concerning behaviors, then it must be more complicated than just how you parented.
Okay, so let's be more proactive and dive into some practical aspect of this interview, which is the best part. Where do we begin? A parent who has a child with those lucky and unlucky behaviors, where does this parent begin to create that list of, my child is hitting, spitting, kicking, yelling, destroying property. That's all we see, the observable part of the behavior. But you tell us a different way of approaching it.
Correct. The first step is to use an instrument on the website of my nonprofit, Lives in the Balance, livesinthebalance.org. People want to find an instrument called the Assessment of Lagging Skills and Unsolved Problems. And of course, that's what gives us the information that we've been missing. That's what gives us the information that we needed to be focused on all along. Lagging skills are for lenses. Lagging skills help caregivers understand why this particular child is responding to problems and frustrations in ways that are unlucky. Unsolved problems tell us what we're going to be trying to solve with this child. We've got to make a list of unsolved problems, though, because once we have our list of unsolved problems, this kid's unsolved problems and the challenging behaviors that go along with those unsolved problems are highly predictable, and we can start solving those problems proactively, which gets us out of the heat of the moment. So the first thing parents need is the right lenses on lagging skills and to know what they're supposed to be working on with their kid. If it's not going to be behavior, unsolved problems. And the Assessment of Lagging Skills and Unsolved Problems provides caregivers with precisely that information. The next step is to prioritize those unsolved problems, because if your kid has 20 or 30 different expectations that they are having difficulty reliably meeting, you're not going to be able to solve them all at once. Trying to solve them all at once is the surefire way to guarantee that none of them all are going to get solved. So, got to prioritize. You pick 3. You're never working on more than 3 unsolved problems at any given point in time with a child. Now, of course, the next question is which 3? Any unsolved problems that are setting in motion safety issues would be a top priority. Safety is a big deal, and it's very hard to have people work together on solving problems if one or both of them is feeling unsafe. If we don't have safety issues, we're either going with frequency, the unsolved problems that are setting in motion concerning behaviors most often, or gravity, the unsolved problems that are having the greatest negative impact on this kid's life or the lives of others. You pick 3.
Hi, it's Amber from Australia, and I thought I would do a special plug for Anna for her patreon.com website. If you go to patreon.com, you can find Anna on Authentic Parenting there. I really encourage you guys to get on and make a donation. When I had a chat to her recently, I asked how she covered the costs, and Anna mentioned it costs about $500 to do the episodes each month. And she was fortunate to have 8 people who were donating on patreon.com, and she would get $35 from that donation. Well, I didn't realize there's a bit of a gap there between $500 and $35. So I thought that I'd give a shout out to all the Aussie listeners there. I know how much, there's a few of us, and I know how much all of us appreciate the work that Anna's doing. The guests are so interesting, and we know how much work goes into preparing a podcast. So I thought I would make a suggestion. If you guys need ideas for Christmas, or you want to make a Christmas donation to Anna, let's show some Aussie love to Anna and her podcast by getting on board the donations. I've signed up for $10 a month, and I'm excited to what Anna's going to bring in the new year, and I feel great that I can show her my support with this.
And so parents need to make 2 lists. The first list is the lagging skills, and the second one is unresolved problems.
Unsolved problems, correct.
The lagging skills, the language here is very important. We don't want the parent to list the problems like kicking, screaming, hitting.
Those are
right?
behaviors, right?
These are behaviors. We need to be as specific as possible.
Well, now you're talking about the writing of unsolved problems. The lagging skills are easy because there's a list of them on the assessment of lagging skills and unsolved problems, and all people have to do is check them off.
Oh, okay. Yes.
Writing unsolved problems is a little tougher, but there are some guidelines and lots of examples for how to do it. So that's harder than checking off lagging skills, but you want to word your unsolved problems in a way that actually sets the stage for the kid to provide you with information about what's hard about meeting that expectation. And the wording of the unsolved problem on the assessment of lagging skills and unsolved problems is going to translate directly into the words that you're going to use when it comes time to introduce the unsolved problem to the child, when it's time to solve it together. So the wording of the unsolved problems is important, but there's lots of information on how to do that.
Yes. I just wanted to make a point of that, because if someone who hasn't read the book or is not familiar with your work is not going to, understand very well, I don't want them to get confused.
The good news is that there is a 30-minute video on the Lives in the Balance website teaching people how to use the assessment of lagging skills and unsolved problems. So it's all there, waiting for them.
Oh, that's great. I will have links to all of those resources in the show notes. So, solving problems collaboratively with our children. Sounds fantastic. So there are 3 plans, plan A, plan B, plan C. Could you very quickly tell what plan A and plan C are? But I want to linger on the plan B longer. And if possible, maybe we can do a concrete example, a role
Sure.
play. I'm not sure, what's your go-to way of doing this kind of things. I'd be open for a role play. I can play the child. I would be happy to do anything to make this more educational for the listener.
Great. There are 3 ways to approach an unsolved problem with a kid. And those 3 ways are called Plan A, Plan B, and Plan C. You are only really using 2 of those plans in this model, B and C. Plan A is only in the mix because it's still very popular at this point in human evolution. But you are rarely, if ever, using Plan A when you are implementing this model. So let's start with Plan C. Plan C is where you are setting aside a particular expectation, at least for now. Not because you're giving in, not because you're giving up, but because you're prioritizing. If you've identified 20 or 30 different unsolved problems, we've already established that you're not going to be able to work on them all at once. You're picking 3 that you're going to solve collaboratively. What happens to the rest? You are setting them aside for now. Because if you try solving them all at once, none of them are going to get solved. So Plan C is what we're doing with the unsolved problems that we have consciously, deliberately, and proactively decided, you know what? We're removing that expectation for now. We got bigger fish to fry. Now, in the case of the very volatile, unstable, reactive kids that I tend to like working with, Plan C is also about stabilizing, because any expectation you've removed from the kid's radar screen for now won't be setting in motion concerning behaviors because that expectation is now gone. Not forever, for now. When will it come back? After you've solved some of your higher priority unsolved problems. So what you're noticing here is that we really try to structure this for parents. We really try to build in systems so that this is as proactive as possible, and so that parents are not making a decision right in the heat of the moment about whether a problem is being dealt with Plan B or Plan C. We're deciding all of that ahead of time. There are a lot of kids out there who are placed on some pretty powerful psychotropic medications for stabilization purposes. And I'm not anti-medication. I just know that a lot of those kids might not be on those medications if more people knew that another way to stabilize kids was through Plan C. Now that leaves us with only 2 other plans, A and B. Both represent a way to solve a problem with a kid. There's just one massive difference between them. With Plan A, you're solving the problem unilaterally. With Plan B, you're solving the problem collaboratively. Plan B is the way you're solving problems in this model. Doesn't mean we are allergic to Plan A. The example I always give is that if a kid is about to dart in front of a speeding car in a parking lot, you're not doing Plan C. You're not saying, you know what, I got bigger fish to... You're not doing Plan B. It's too late. You're doing Plan A. You yank on the kid's arm. If the kid blows up, so be it. But if 3 weeks later, the kid is now darted in front of a speeding car in a parking lot 17 additional times, and you've yanked 17 additional times, yanking may be working at saving the kid's life, but yanking is not working at solving this problem. You're going to need a different approach. And if you decide that parking lots are not crucial to your child's existence at this point in your child's development, or that your child simply isn't going to be mastering parking lot comportment anytime soon, you're going to put parking lots in Plan C. You're going to find ways for your kid not to find him or herself in parking lots anytime soon. If you decide that this is important at this point in your kid's development, and that your kid is actually capable of meeting that expectation, you're going to do Plan B.
May I
Those are the three
ask?
plans.
Yes. May I ask something about Plan C? When we decide consciously, deliberately to put that aside, certain unresolved problems, do we communicate that to the child, or this is, I decide by myself and the child has nothing to do with this?
Judgment call. Depends on the age of the kid, depends on how much you feel your kid needs to know what's going on. Depends if you want to explain the layout of things to your kid. Sometimes I'll say to kids, you're going to notice that there are some things your parents used to expect from you that they're not going to be expecting from you, at least for now. And they're not even going to bring those things up. And if the kid says, well, like what? I might say, well, like brushing your teeth before you go to bed at night. So I don't have to brush my teeth before I go to bed at night. We are not going to place that expectation on you right now. Doesn't mean it's gone forever. It's gone for now. What am I working on? Well, we've identified, and you can help us with this. We've identified a few here. You can tell us which ones you think it would be good to work on first. We've got the difficulty going to school unsolved problem. Now, I think most parents, this is editorial comment here, most parents, generally speaking, would agree that going to school is probably more crucial than teeth brushing. Not that teeth brushing isn't important, just that it doesn't really rank compared to going to school. Another one we've decided to work on, an editorial comment, let's say this is because of a safety issue, is difficulty sharing your toys with your brother in the playroom. That's our second one. And our third one is difficulty going to bed by 8:30 p.m. Those are the three we thought we could work on. If you're good with it, if you've got other ones that you'd like to work on, we can certainly talk about what we're going to be working on first. That's how you explain what's in Plan B and what's in Plan C if a kid cares. If a kid doesn't care, you may not have to explain anything. The kid will notice, of course, my parents aren't telling me to brush my teeth at night anymore, and they are not yelling at me when I don't. And we are not in conflict anymore over teeth brushing. I guess they'll ask me to brush my teeth again someday. I have noticed that they are working with me on some other things, but not that thing. Okay.
Okay, Plan B. Let's talk about Plan B. How do we start? It's not that easy, I have to say. When I was first learning it, even though my lenses are correct and everything I know, and it's difficult. And I have to admit that it's a lot easier when you try Plan B and it's not going your way. Oh, resorting to Plan A is so good and easy, and it comes like so naturally to me. But I think, I just want to say that because my listeners think I'm a pro at this. Even for us, it's difficult. There's a learning curve. It all makes sense when I read the book and I'm like, yes, I got this. But when I'm in the moment, I'm like, wait, what? What do I say? What was next? What am I going to do? I recently have applied this with my daughter just a week ago. She was having a difficulty with her reading and writing class, and she was not doing it. She was not handing in her assignments, and I was getting an email from a teacher. Now she's doing great in math. She's honors math, all A's. How come she's having lagging skills in this reading writing class? So again, I sat down with her and I said, I've noticed, I started like that. And in the beginning, it wasn't going well. And you have techniques in your book. Of course, we can't go in detail into the strategy, into everything. The listener has to read the book and watch videos and listen to your podcast. But It was difficult asking her questions without losing patience, without inserting my own solutions, suggesting what I already knew, making assumptions. It was hard for me to be patient because in my mind, I already knew the problem, had the solution, and that's it, even though I was using plan B. But once I relinquished my agenda, and I got into drilling, asking better questions and listened, my eyes opened because she said, first she was saying that she hates the teacher, she hates the assignment, it's so stupid, I don't like this, I never liked this, things of this nature. And it was sort of a roadblock. I didn't know how to proceed. And then somehow I did, I guess, because she said, I guess I'm procrastinating, Mom. It's a mindset issue. And I said, I think we've identified, the problem. So I'm not sure if you want to use this example. I really would love for us to do something practical.
Well, here's the deal. The first thing we should tell people, I think, are the 3 steps that are involved in solving a problem collaboratively.
Mm-hmm.
Just briefly, the 3 steps are, the first step is called the empathy step. That's where caregivers are gathering information from kids about what's making it hard for a kid to meet a particular expectation. And the empathy step is definitely the hardest step to help people out on the Lives in the Balance website, as again, are 8 drilling strategies. Because the hardest part for adults in gathering information is knowing what to ask. And thanks to something called the drilling cheat sheet, there's 8 drilling strategies. You'll never not know what to ask. The goal of the empathy step, though, is to achieve the clearest possible understanding of what's making it hard for your daughter to meet that expectation. And it sounds like she was having difficulty either getting started on or completing certain assignments. And that's, we'd want to word it as specifically as possible, but that's a fairly common unsolved problem that parents and educators have to deal with kids. Second step is the define adult concerns step. That's where the adult is entering his or her concern into consideration on the same unsolved problems. What are we adults concerned about? We're concerned about why it's important that expectation be met. We're concerned about how the unsolved problem is affecting the kid and or how the unsolved problem is affecting other people. The third step is called the invitation. That's where kid and caregiver are collaborating on a solution, but a solution that is both realistic, meaning both people can do what they're actually agreeing to do, and mutually satisfactory, meaning that the solution truly addresses the concerns of both parties, concerns that were identified in those first 2 steps. So the example with your daughter is as good as any. Let's jump in.
Mm-hmm.
What assignment was she having? I want to word the unsolved problem well. What was the assignment that she was having difficulty getting started on or completing?
It was to write a realistic fiction.
Difficulty writing a realistic fiction. For which class?
It's called IRLA, reading, writing. I don't know what the acronym stands for. Yes.
Difficulty writing a realistic narrative, did you say?
Realistic fiction.
Fiction in IRA or ILA. Mm-hmm. Yes?
That's
great.
Correct. Mm-hmm.
And so here's what it would sound like when you, maybe it did sound like this, when you introduce the unsolved problem to your daughter. I've noticed you've been having difficulty writing a realistic
fiction.
What's the word again? Fiction for ILA. What's up? And now you're all ears. And what you're going to be using are those drilling strategies to try to understand what's making that hard for her as well as you possibly can. What did she say first?
I think in the beginning she said, I don't want to talk about this. Give me some space. Something of that nature. Mm-hmm.
So that raises an important point. And that is, I usually like to give kids advance warning that there's something we'd like to talk with them about, because If you don't give them advance warning, then even though you might be doing plan B proactively, you're still springing the unsolved problem on your kid. Better to make an appointment and better for it to be known what it is that you'd like to understand better. After you got past, I don't want to talk about it right now, what did you get next?
I think she said, I don't care. This is stupid. I don't like this teacher.
For many parents, those sound like showstoppers, right? What do I say next? What you say next is drilling strategy number 1, reflective listening, mirroring, simply saying back to the kid whatever the kid just said to you. You don't like the teacher. And then you add a clarifying question or statement like, tell me more about that. Or it's stupid. It's stupid. How so? And now you're getting more information. So those aren't showstoppers, especially if you have reflective listening in your repertoire of drilling strategies. What's the most informative thing your daughter told you about why she's having difficulty getting started? And by the way, you might have done a great job of drilling. What did you ultimately come to believe about what was making that expectation hard for her?
I think she said 3 important things. The first one that came in the earlier part of the drilling was when she said, this is stupid, I don't want to do this, etc. When I asked more questions, how so, tell me more, she said, well, they gave us this structured thing and I have to just plug in. So basically it was a formulaic writing assignment. And she said she has a hard time with that because she rather do something creative on her own than has to fit into this formulaic model, which is, I guess, overwhelming for her. And I asked her, I said, is it overwhelming? Is it too much? Is it, you don't know where to start? How many segments are there?
Now here's the interesting thing.
Mm-hmm.
If you were getting that information from her, it doesn't sound to me like you needed to guess. It sounds to me like she could have told you, in which case you could have asked, how is that harder for you? You don't have to guess. It sounds like she was giving you good information. Let's rely on your daughter for that information. Guessing is something you would do at the end of the empathy step if you were getting nothing from her. But it doesn't sound to me like you're getting nothing from her. So no reason to put ideas in her head. Let's get it from the horse's mouth. Tell me more about that. Right? Otherwise, it's actually making it harder for her to tell us and interrupting her stream of thought by us beginning to guess just because she gives us a little bit of information. So parents, educators, caregivers, hold off on the guessing. If you've got a kid who's talking, you're probably not going to need to guess. You are probably doing some educated guessing primarily with kids who aren't talking, but she wasn't in that category. She was telling you. What were the other 2 big things that you heard?
Then she said that it's a mindset issue for me. I just procrastinate. And then when I continued listening and asking more questions with procrastination, meaning, what do you mean? And she said, I guess I'm not that creative. That was like the end of this conclusion. She said that she has always had a hard time with creative writing.
Interesting. So you may not have been technically perfect in the empathy step, but you got a lot of great information. Now, a very important question for me to ask you. Mm-hmm. How much of all of that did you know before you did the empathy step with her?
I had none of it. It was such a surprise.
And that's the key. Mm-hmm. So let's say that's crucial, right? Mm-hmm. Let's say that you were in reward and punishment mode and you said to your daughter, you didn't gather any of that information. You said to her, all right, you know what? I'm taking charge here. If you do that assignment, I will let you go to bed an hour later. And if you don't do the assignment, you're going to bed an hour earlier. What's that saying to your daughter?
Oh,
she's not listening.
Yes.
She thinks that this is going to solve this. It's not going to solve this. She doesn't understand. The number 1 complaint I get from kids about their parents is that they don't listen. And the number 1 complaint I get from parents about their kids is that the kid won't talk to them, and maybe that's why. But that's what you're looking for in the empathy step, a new understanding of what's making it hard for your kid to meet a particular expectation, but also notice what's going on here. You're listening, you're empathizing, you and your daughter are communicating, you are improving your relationship with her just by listening, by being non-judgmental, by not throwing solutions at her that couldn't possibly work, by not telling her what must be getting in her way. Boy, there's a lot going on in the empathy step.
Yes, that's true. So
now, in the define it all concern step, by the way,
yes,
you'd want to say why it's important that she get that assignment done. And once again, that would be related either to how it's affecting her to not get it done, or how it's affecting others to not get it done. It's probably more how it's affecting her. You'd have to enter that into consideration. And then before you entered the invitation, I noticed earlier you said that you thought that the mindset issue was the most important concern of your daughter's. But here's the interesting thing. Before we enter the invitation, we're going to ask her. Of the different things you told me about what's hard about getting started on and completing the narrative, the whatever we called it, realistic, whatever.
Realistic fiction.
I don't know why I'm having trouble with that word. I wonder if there's a way. So she's going to pick one, but let's say she surprises you. She doesn't pick the mindset one. She picks the, this way of writing is just impossible for me. It's not the way I write. Now here comes the invitation. So first of all, number one, you got lots of new information in the empathy step. Parents are frequently surprised by that. Then parents are frequently surprised, and other caregivers, by which one the kid picks. Wonder if there's a way, this is the invitation, for us to do something about the fact that they're making you write in ways that are very unnatural for you and don't come naturally to you. That was the kid's concern. Mm-hmm. And also make sure that you, let's say this was your concern, get the assignment done and in on time so that your grade isn't affected and so that you stay in good standing so that you can remain in advanced English next semester. You are then giving the kid the first crack at the solution. Do you have any ideas? And now we're rolling. What are the solutions? I don't know. Whatever you and your daughter come up with.
We did, actually. Can I share?
What did you come up with? I can't wait.
I'm not sure if I nailed the second step. I don't remember how I phrased it. The concerns was mainly not for me. I phrased the concern for her because I don't have a major concern, really. You know, she has a bigger concern in this case. I think I said, what can we do in the invitation step? What do you think can help you and all of that? She said two things. Remember, she was complaining about the structured activity.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
She said,
by the way, she's not the first kid I've heard complain about that when it comes to writing compositions.
Oh, okay. She said, you know what? I think what I can do. In the second step, I guess, I think you can call it in the second step. At some point, let me say this again. At some point, I communicated to her, and I think that's my concern, that our goal from you as parents is not for you to get A or A plus or some perfect score. As I said, since you think you have procrastination issue here, I said, I don't expect you to get an A. I'm not a perfectionist. C will do it. I said, what do you want to get? You know, what would be satisfactory for you? She said, yeah, B, A, C is less desirable for her. She wants to do well. When in the invitation step, she identified two things. The structured activity, she said, I'd rather do my own way first and then deconstruct and go plug into their own system.
That's great. Great solution.
And I said, okay, that sounds like a good idea. And she said, in terms of procrastination, Mommy, can you take my phone away, my distraction, and give me some time on the weekend by myself? You and Dad go out. I'll just be by myself with my computer and I'll do it. All I have to do is just to get started. I said, sounds like a good idea. And this conversation was on a weekend and on a Wednesday. But then when the weekend came, I reminded her, I said, remember, we have an agreement that we're going to take your phone and you're going to do this, you're going to do that. She said, yes. Well, and here is the thing. We did leave her alone. We did everything what she asked. And we came back after an hour or so. She's like, I only did the first part, Mom. The first part was like the shortest part of this writing assignment. And I'm like, oh gosh, this is not working. I was so devastated at that point because I thought she would have already completed this thing. But then it took longer time for her to finish. And she did finish on her own. Eventually, that entire Saturday, she worked. And we held her phone per her request, even though it was tempting. I think she was missing out on a lot of socialization. She finished it. And she said, I did a crappy job, but I at least finished it. And she said, Mom, please don't read it. I don't want you to read it to know, what kind of poor writing I have done. But at least I have finished it.
Sounds like you guys are well on your way. A solution that doesn't work or doesn't get you all the way there is not something to be devastated about. It's actually more information. And it's crucial to the process of ultimately coming up with a solution that is going to get the job done. But this model and world history are filled with initial solutions that didn't quite accomplish the mission. The goal is to learn from them and come up with a solution based on what you've learned. Boy, your daughter sounds like a natural. Sounds like you're better at this than you think you are.
Oh, boy.
You all are well on your way. And truth is, maybe you'll be happy with a B or C grade in doing Plan B. I think if you're getting B's and C's for doing Plan B, you're going to be very happy with the outcome. You don't necessarily have to get an A+.
Oh, thank you for that. That's a good relief. Well, I want to thank you from the bottom of my heart for the work that you have done for humanity, the books you have written, and you continue doing amazing work in the world. I really honor you and respect your work. Again, I use it in my personal life and my professional, and I hope my daughter's IRLA teacher is not listening to this podcast. Then I'll be in real trouble. So thank you so much.
Not bad for the teacher to know what your daughter is struggling with either, because if they don't know, they can't do much about it themselves. But it's been my pleasure. Thanks very much for having me do this.
Thank you so much. That concludes today's conversation, my dear listener, and I hope you enjoyed it. What's your biggest takeaway? Did you find it useful? How you might apply what you learned from this episode into your own parenting? I hope you took notes. The collaborative problem-solving model is a really powerful method. As you learned from this episode, I use it in my parenting too. There is a learning curve involved, I'm not going to lie, but I highly recommend you give it a try. I want to hear from you. You can send me a note to the email info@authenticparenting.com. You can leave a voicemail, and I do prefer audio, to the number 732-763-2576. And for international listeners, you can use the free SpeakPipe tool on the contact page of my website, authenticparenting.com/contact. To access the full episode show notes, visit authenticparenting.com/256. If you find the podcast helpful and enjoy the content, I would appreciate if you could take a quick second to rate and review it on Apple Podcasts. Reviews are very important for helping podcasts find their audiences, and we would love your support in helping us find ours. Until next week, connect to the present moment, to yourself and your children. I am Anna Seewald. Thank you so much for listening.